Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Spellos from Plant-Powered Metro New York, and along with my co-hosts Judith Zerdin and Ben Martins, who will be on here in a sec, we welcome you to this episode of Heart to Healthy Heart, plant-based conversations that can save your life. What an exciting night on the show. As we wait the arrival of this evening's guest into our cozy virtual studio, I want to take a minute to introduce the network director of Plant-Powered Metro New York, Leanna Levine Reisner. Leanna, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you.
You know, so could it be that time of the year already? I smell the tofu roasting and the cashew mac and cheese on the stove, which means it's time for.
Oh, I don't know. Plantathon, that's right.
Why don't you tell us about what everyone can expect?
Sure. So not next week, 12 days, less than 2 weeks, we have the return of our second annual Plantathon Giving Tuesday live stream celebration. And Plantathon is meant to be a celebration of the many voices of plant-based health across the country and in our local community. And we're just so excited to bring it back this year. If you missed it last year, it's a marathon live stream. Last year we had 8 hours of programming. This time we have 9 hours of programming. Think of it like a PBS special, a telethon, but we're not going to call you at home. Don't worry. But it's such a nice time of year because we're hunkering down. It's cold outside, and we're going to enjoy all the best that we can glean from experts in plant-based nutrition from across the country, from our community members who are a wealth of knowledge, who always have something to share that can be instructive in all of our lives, and demonstrations, and the chefs who sort of make life lively for us, showing us how to work with food and enjoy the creativity of working with plants.
Just sounds amazing as always. So 9 hours, huh? We're going to be doing this for 9 hours in 10 days, huh?
We are. And you know, the great thing is we'll have 2 hours of Spanish programming for folks who would like to tune in from 2 to 4 p.m. that day. Eastern will be offering all Spanish programming. So I encourage anybody who wants to dig into the Latin elements of plant-based living and eating to join us then. But yes, you and I, Jim, we're going to be going strong. And it's also, because it's on Giving Tuesday, it's a moment when we get to enjoy asking for donations, but in a very kind and loving way, because hopefully we're giving you something in return through the education and the perspective on plant-based living that comes with all of that. But all of the donations that are made during Plantathon and even now until then and through the end of December are going to be matched dollar for dollar by an anonymous donor up to $50,000, which is such a great amount of money. So if anybody wants to pitch in, you can start today.
And speaking of education, we have an education person waiting in the wings. So how about if we end the Plantathon conversation? Leanna, happy holidays and can't wait to see you in 10 days.
Thanks, Jim. Enjoy.
It's going to be an amazing night here tonight. So is an introduction really needed? Well, for those of you living under a plant, and I guess that's something that may or may not be a good thing, let's get a quick introduction here. Founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Michael Greger is a physician and internationally recognized speaker on nutrition. His science-based nonprofit, nutritionfacts.org, everyone knows, offers a free online portal hosting more than 2,000 videos and articles on a myriad of health topics. Sought after lecturer, he's presented at the conference on world affairs, on the World Bank, testified before Congress, invited as an expert witness in Oprah Winfrey's defense in the infamous meat defamation trial. He's a graduate of Cornell University School of Agriculture and Tufts University School of Medicine. Acclaimed author, How Not to Die, How Not to Die cookbook, How Not to Diet, maybe another How Not to coming up real soon. All New York Times bestsellers, and all proceeds Dr. Greger receives from the sales of his book and speaking honoraria are donated directly to charity. Dr. Greger, it's an honor. Thank you for being here.
I'm so glad to be here, donated to a charity like the Plantathon. Encourage people to support. If only every community in the country had such exciting, vibrant grassroots, we would have a different world.
Agreed. We didn't even say who's going to be on there, but the Scherzeyes are there, and Dr. B is going to be on, and the Esselstyns are going to be on. It's going to be an amazing day. But why don't we start now? We're going to have questions coming in, and please keep your questions focused on the intersection of diet and cardiovascular disease, because that's really what we want to focus on, what we all focus on in the show. And I'm just going to throw the first softball up there, which is the holidays are coming. What are the top 5 foods that people should be eating for their heart during this holiday season?
Well, not just this holiday season. At any point in time, the healthiest foods out there. In fact, the second half of my book, How Not to Die, centers my recommendations around a daily dozen checklist of all the things I encourage people to fit into their daily routine, like berries, the healthiest fruits, dark green leafy vegetables, the healthiest vegetables, and legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. In fact, if you just ate those 3 foods, added those 3 foods to your daily diet, you go a long way towards eating healthier, not just for your heart, but for your other organ system.
Fantastic. Judy, got a question about the gut microbiome?
Yeah, well, just one question about it. Hi, Dr. Greger.
Hello.
So good to see you. So, which fermented foods should we be eating for our gut microbiome? And I'm a little, people often ask about yogurt and things, but we're not really supposed to be eating dairy, right? So could you expound?
If we want to support our microbiome, the most important thing we can do is to eat prebiotics. Prebiotics are what our good bacteria eat. You can eat all the probiotics you want, which are the beneficial bacteria themselves. But then if you continue to eat the diet that starved you of the probiotics you had originally, well, then they're just going to die off as well. And so ideally what we do is foster the growth of our own endogenous good bacteria by eating prebiotics. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's fiber and resistant starch concentrated in whole intact grains and legumes like the beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. That is where the most concentrated sources of fiber are. I encourage people to eat those foods every single day. That's the best way to support your microbiome. And certainly the concern about some fermented foods, such as sauerkraut, is has too much sodium, which is something that is very important to realize, regardless of what else you eat in your diet. It's easy to eat too much sodium if you're eating a lot of processed foods. And one processed food, in particular, packed with sodium. That's something like sauerkraut, pickles, those kind of things. So I encourage people to certainly moderate their intake.
Fantastic. We're still going to ask people to get their questions in the chat box, but Ben, I hand it over to you.
Yeah, Dr. Greger, which are the fats that harm the heart and which are the fats that are beneficial to the heart?
The harmful fats are saturated fats and trans fats. These are the fats that increase our LDL cholesterol, which is the primary risk factor for our number one killer of both men and women. That's heart disease. And the third component that increases our LDL cholesterol is dietary cholesterol itself, concentrated mostly in eggs. Trans fats was concentrated mostly in these hydrogenated oils, which are added to junk food, since been eliminated from the American food supply, but still found in junk food in the rest of the world. Saturated fats found predominantly in meat and dairy. The number one source is dairy. Number two source is chicken in the United States. And then goes on to pork, then beef. And so these are the foods we want to minimize to decrease our LDL cholesterol, trying to push our LDL under 70 for primary prevention, meaning you don't have heart disease. You want to prevent yourself from being diagnosed with heart disease. You want to push your LDL down to 70. If you already have heart disease, trying to prevent your second heart attack, then we really want to push LDL down, 30 to 50 or even lower. And to do that, you really need an extraordinarily healthy diet. And so that's a diet that eliminates saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, trans fats, and then goes the additional step of adding into our diet foods that actively draw cholesterol from our body, like, soluble fiber-rich foods, slimy foods like eggplant, okra, oatmeal. It has a whole portfolio of different foods that decrease your cholesterol using different mechanisms. So they have this additive effect. So you can look up Portfolio Diet by David Jenkins, strictly plant-based diet, but has particular plants that help pull your cholesterol down even further. And in terms of fats that have, I wouldn't say, so there wouldn't be a really beneficial fat. We used to think that the omega-3 fats found in fish and flax seeds had benefits for the heart. But it turns out that those early studies were supplanted by better evidence that shows that there is no benefit for cardiovascular health. So there may be, now I'm not saying don't eat flax seeds, may benefit cognitive health, but in terms of heart healthfulness, it wouldn't be the fat per se, but the food source of the fat, which is nuts. Nuts and seeds are heart healthy, particularly walnuts. And in terms of intermediate risk factors such as cholesterol, such as endothelial function. So I would encourage people to eat a handful or an ounce of nuts every day. But it's not necessarily the fat itself that's actually helping. It's the whole food itself somehow.
Makes perfect sense. Dr. Williams a few weeks ago or a few months ago on a show said he eats avocados based on the local and the most recent research. Is that something consistent that we should be eating an avocado every day?
If you like avocados, eat avocados. My only concern would be that you're, dipping some deep fried chips into them. But if you instead dip, vegetables, or, you take corn tortillas and you air fry them or you toast them in the toaster oven, they become crispy, delicious, fragrant, like the best tortilla chips, but, aren't deep fried, don't have that added fat. Then you're good to go.
So one of our guests who are watching asked, should she then use chia for eggs instead of flax meal?
Oh, either way. I mean, you can both make, in terms of baking, you can use either flax or chia. They're both high in omega-3s, which is helpful for cognitive health. They're both packed with soluble fiber, but you actually, the benefits of chia, the benefits of flax seeds, many of the benefits are lost if you don't grind them up. They basically pass through you and don't do you much good. So you have to grind them up. And so the concern is the same may be for chia. And many people don't actually get ground chia. They just use regular chia. So the concern is we wouldn't be able to extract all the nutrition out of that chia. Now, if it's, left in water and gels up, is it easier for your body to digest? We really don't have an answer to that. But probably to get the benefits of chia, we want to grind the chia seeds up, and you can actually buy chia seed meal. So that would be an option, or just use ground flax seeds.
So another question that came in talks about the athletes and their family are wondering whether food or exercise has a more beneficial impact on cardiovascular health.
Not even a close call. And that is, it's what we eat. In fact, just this week, yesterday, I think my video yesterday was talking about why all athletes should eat plant-based. And the reason is because athletes, the endurance athletes, actually have higher rates of atherosclerosis than people who sit on the couch all day. And you say, wait a second, how does that make any sense? Well, I mean, those who run a lot, they have to actually eat more. And so because they're burning so many calories. And so if you're eating a standard American diet and you eat more, what are you eating more of? You're eating more junk. And that extra saturated fat and cholesterol increases your own LDL, and you can actually get more plaque in your heart, more heart damage, set you up at a greater risk of cardiovascular disease if you're an endurance and marathoner than if you're sitting on the couch all day. So it's even more important for people who eat more food every day to eat healthy food.
Makes sense. Now, somebody wants to know just a simple question about pickling beets. Good?
It depends what you're pickling. So when most people say they're pickling, they're using some kind of salt. But you can if you just pickle in vinegar, then you're totally good. In fact, it's even more beneficial because you get the acetic acid in vinegar has beneficial effects that I talk about in my book, How Not to Diet. So pickling vegetables in vinegar, fantastic, delicious, extra benefit. The concern is with the added salt.
Makes sense. I'm going to turn it over to Ben because Ben, we've been talking about before the show about miso, and I know you had a question about that you wanted to ask the doctor.
I think it was Judy, no?
No.
Well, it's okay, Ben. The question about miso sometimes is recommended to add into recipes. I think even in one of your cookbooks.
Yeah.
So is there too much salt in miso for most people, or should that be used very sparingly?
Fantastic question. So miso is packed with sodium, which is probably the worst thing about humanity's diet is excess sodium, according to the Global Burden of Disease study. However, it's the one source of sodium that has not been shown to increase the risk of the two things that we care about when it comes to sodium. One is high blood pressure, and second is stomach cancer. So if you compare, so you go to Japan where people eat a lot of miso, and you compare people who eat the most multiple bowls of miso soup every day compared to those who eat less, and they actually don't have higher blood pressure, they don't have higher stomach cancer rates. And so the question is, well, wait a second, it's got so much sodium in it, what gives? And so the thought is, well, maybe the soy protein has some kind of effect that counteracts it, and who knows, but it does not have the same effect. And so that's what I use to add kind of saltiness to dishes in both my cookbooks, is because it's a way to get the salty flavor without suffering the downsides of excess sodium.
Makes sense. So question just came in, again, more an athletic question, but for a runner who eats a healthy plant-based diet on a regular basis, any idea what would cause continual diarrhea?
All sorts of things can cause a chronic diarrhea. So if you have diarrhea for more than 2 weeks, which is the definition of chronic diarrhea, if you have it less than 2 weeks and you're able to keep up your liquid intake, and it's not affecting your diet too much, it's not bloody, and doesn't have accompanying abdominal pain, etc., then it's a matter of just letting it pass. You may have had a bout of food poisoning or something, but at the 2-week mark is what we in the field of medicine kind of artificially delineate as chronic diarrhea. In that case, you really need to find out what's going on, because at 2 weeks, it really shouldn't be something like, a typical kind of food poisoning bout, which typically only lasts a few days. And so the concern is there might be some underlying pathology like colitis, or there's a long list of things. So I would encourage anyone with diarrhea of 2 weeks of duration or more to go to their physician and find out what the cause is, because you can't treat the cause until you know what it is.
Makes sense to me. So this one came in, and it's been so controversial lately, but might as well put it on here. Share your views about oil in the diet and whether you consider olive oil a health food.
Doesn't seem controversial to me. Is oil a whole food? Oil is not a whole food. And so why do we care about whole foods? Because we remove so much nutrition. So for example, walnut oil has some vitamin E, for example, which is a fat soluble component of walnuts, but missing all the fiber, all the other vitamins, all the water soluble vitamins, all the beneficial plant protein. And so you've basically thrown all that good nutrition in the trash. You just eat walnut oil compared to walnuts. Now, olive oil is olive oil, the same thing. You are missing out on all the water soluble nutrients in olive, which is just a fruit. And so you're just getting out the oil and the fat soluble nutrients. And so you say, well, shouldn't you just eat olives? Unfortunately, to make olives palatable, they have to soak them in brine, soak them in salt water. So they actually end up being way too salty, way too high sodium content. And so I would encourage people to stick to whole foods, and then you get to all the nutrients. You're not throwing anything away. Oil is the most calorically dense food on the planet. I mean, it's more calories per unit volume than anything else. 1 tablespoon, 120 calories. What are you getting for that 120 calories? Not much in terms of nutrition. Whereas 120 calories of blackberries, that's multiple cups of blackberries. That's a lot of nutrition. Fill you up. And so those are some of the reasons why I encourage people to stick to whole foods. So getting, your fat in the form of oil is like getting carbohydrates in the form of table sugar. It's like instead of eating the sugar beet, where most sugar comes from these days, instead of eating a beet, they're throwing away all nutrition just getting the sugar in that beet. Well, why would you do that when you can just eat the beet? So eat the avocados and the nuts and seeds and the nut butters and seed butters. It's not that fat is bad. It's just that we want to get whole food sources of fat. It's like saying, is protein good? Well, where are you getting that protein? You're getting it from, pork rinds? Are we getting it from, hummus? Is carbohydrates bad? Well, are we talking kidney beans or jelly beans, right? It's not that the macronutrient is good or bad. It's the source. And so what source do we want? Whole plant foods.
Dr. Greger, beans. Why are beans so good for your heart?
Why are beans so good for your heart? Well, it could be a number of reasons. One is that people tend to eat beans instead of beef. So if you're having a burrito, by getting the bean burrito, you're not only getting the fiber, which reduces your LDL cholesterol, but you're also skipping out on all the saturated fat and cholesterol you would get if you ate a meat burrito. It's also, beans are high in potassium, helps bring your blood pressure down. Also, the soluble fiber pulls down your cholesterol even more. So not only does it not add to your cholesterol, have a neutral effect, actually lowers your LDL cholesterol. Those are some, and obviously it's less sodium, so less arterial stiffening. They're one of the healthiest foods we can eat across the board.
Fantastic. Judy, you were going to ask something about fish and fatty fish, right?
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Judy.
So sorry.
It's okay.
Yes. Hi. Okay. So fatty fish. So Dr. Greger, what are your thoughts on fatty fish? A lot of people who are sort of on the cusp of thinking of, doing whole food plant-based say, well, why can't I eat fish? I get omega-3s. I know you just mentioned that there's been some recent research about omega-3s not being as heart healthy as they thought they were previously. But what are some reasons why people should or shouldn't eat fish as part of their diet?
Yeah, so recommendations to eat oily fish or to take fish oil capsules, those randomized take fish oil capsules, does not have the beneficial cardiovascular outcomes we used to think that they had. And so that was kind of missing. So the long chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, were the reasons that there was a recommendation to eat fish, or at least the recommendation to ask your doctor about eating fish. But now that we know they don't have the cardiovascular benefit, then the risk versus benefits really tips towards the risk. And what are the risks? Well, the highest levels of industrial contaminants are found in the aquatic food chain. So, all the mercury spewed from all the coal plants in China eventually settles down into our waterways. It's kind of our oceans, our humanity's sewers at this point. And so, we're talking, whether you're talking about PCBs or dioxins or banned, pesticides like DDT or DDE, metabolite, the highest levels are found in fish. Now, they're the larger fish, longer lived fish, accumulate higher levels. And so eating minnows is better than eating something like, tuna or something, which are massive animals. But I mean, they're just concentrated food state. So that's the primary source of mercury, and these other toxins that we really want to try to eat lower down on the food chain as possible. So in the aquatic ecosystem, that means eating sea vegetables, and in the terrestrial domain, that means just eating plants.
We have a question coming in. It sounds a little bit specific, but the questioner says, after a heart attack due to a blockage in a small branch artery where stents were placed, is there a higher risk of another heart attack even with a plant-based diet?
So having one blockage, there's no such thing as one blockage. I mean, there's no such thing as like isolated heart disease. It's not like one artery has a blockage, the other ones are fine. When you do autopsies on people, There's no such thing as, one vessel disease, two vessel disease. If you have atherosclerosis in one vessel, you have atherosclerosis throughout the entire tree. Every single artery has the walls are encased in atherosclerosis, even if it just bulges out in one or two places to cause those kind of blockages. So heart disease anywhere equals heart disease everywhere. And so absolutely you are at high risk. And so that's why it's critically important to eat a whole food plant-based diet. Not just a plant-based diet, but whole foods. You want to decrease your sodium intake. You don't want to be eating the rare tropical oils like coconut oil, palm kernel oil, palm oil, which found a lot of kind of vegan junk food kind of things. It's critically important for you to get your LDL cholesterol down as low as possible. You're really shooting for 30 to 50 or even lower than that, because you have this known condition.
We are almost out of time. A few quick questions, and one is for a newbie who's in this plant-based arena. Recommended reading for someone new for recipes and knowledge. Is there a book that you might recommend?
Well, I'm a little biased, but How Not to Die on the first half is just 15. I list the 15 causes of death. Talk about the oral diet may play in preventing, arresting, reversing each of our top 15 killers. And then the second half of the book talks about those practical day-to-day grocery store type decisions, where I talk about the daily dozen and all the checklist of all the things I encourage people to fit into their daily diet to make it practical. And there's the How Not to Die cookbook, where I give lots of recipes, where not only every recipe is healthy, but every ingredient of every single recipe is healthy. So that'd be a good place to start. I encourage you to go to your local public library and pick up a copy and check it out.
And what about the next How Not to Age? When is that coming out? And did you learn anything in the research that really just blew you away?
Everything blew my mind. Every chapter, mind blowing. Be out, unfortunately, 13 months. It'll be out December 5th, 2023. Sorry it's taking so long, but it came out to be 420,000 words. That's like 1,200 pages. Way too big. Has to be cut way down. Lots of editing, lots of fact checking. I'm still long in the process, but all sorts of crazy new things I never learned. I mean, I never knew before. Certainly changed my diet. Entire topics that I'd never even heard of. So it was very exciting for me. And I'm just bubbling with excitement to get it out to everybody. I'll be doing videos and everything that gets cut from the book, so none of that information will get lost. I can't wait.
Dr. Greger, it has been such an honor to have you on the show tonight. I know I speak for Ben and Judy that the whole entire plant-powered Metro New York community can't thank you enough for everything that you do. So we appreciate your time. We know you're busy. Have a wonderful holiday, and we can't wait to have all the people on the Plantathon talk about you and what an inspiration you are.
Well, it wouldn't be possible if there weren't people in the trenches like you actually putting this into practice and supporting people. The number one reason people kind of go off the wagon, where they start eating healthy, but then go back to eating their original diet that caused the diseases in the first place, is because of lack of social support. And so that's why it's so critical to have groups like yours. In fact, I go around the country and I said, have you heard about plant-powered New York? I mean, they are doing such amazing stuff, and you just need to replicate yourself everywhere. I'm so glad you're doing all this wonderful work. And I encourage people to donate to support your wonderful work, and anything I can ever do to support you, never hesitate to reach out.
Dr. Greger, thank you so much. And I'm going to right now just let you know that we've had an amazing first season. Dr. Ostfeld, Dr. Williams, Dr. Yagubzadeh, Dr. Reddy, and now Dr. Greger on the show. Most importantly, three of us want to thank our audience for asking such great questions over the past 7 months. We're going to take December off. We're coming back in January 23 for another season of Heart to Healthy Heart, plant-based conversations that can save your life. And from the three of us, and we haven't spoken much about our conditions, I think you'd say there's some living proof in this room right here. If you want to watch any of our episodes again, they are on the Plant Powered Metro New York YouTube channel. On behalf of Judith and Ben, I'm Jim Spellos, wishing you a wonderful, healthy holiday season, and look forward to seeing you right back here again in 2023. Be well, everyone.